introduce Miss Elizabeth Combe, Senior Specialist of Engagement and Philanthropy for the SHRM Foundation, who will introduce our program and presenters. Elizabeth?
Thank you, Kim. I'm not going to take up too much time, but just wanted to thank you, Jennifer, and all of DC SHRM for your commitment to this issue. I'm also a resident of the DMV, so it makes me personally happy as well. The Getting Talent Back to Work initiative at SHRM Foundation is an important part of our strategic priority to build inclusive workplaces. Following the year that was 2020, the foundation vision of a world of work works for all is more important than ever. If you were to go on shrmfoundation.org or gettingtalentbacktowork.org, you will see we characterize people with prior criminal records as untapped talent. The goal of the digital hub is for Getting Talent Back to Work is to provide a comprehensive suite of information, educational resources, training opportunities, as well as a certificate program. So you have all the tools and insights to move that talent from untapped to tapped, if you will. And it is all free resources courtesy of some very generous sponsors, including the Lumina Foundation. We know people are really interested in this subject. Web traffic on Getting Talent Back to Work is up 300% in 2021. This is a personal passion point for the CEO of SHRM, Johnny C. Taylor Jr. We also know that whenever he talks about it or blogs about it or posts about it, people share the information like crazy. We are about to release updated research from our groundbreaking 2018 report that shows there is momentum, and you being part of today is just more evidence we are at a critical inflection point on these issues. So let me stop talking and introduce my colleagues from the Center for Employment Opportunities. They have been invaluable critical partners for SHRM Foundation in the development of this initiative. I will let them share their own stories and the larger roles they play at CEO, which will be of interest to all of you. I wanted to thank them as well. Dr. Rimer and Aaron bring a wealth of knowledge and lived experience to what they are about to share. This texture woven into the initiative adds to the richness you will hear in their presentation and has brought so much to our partnership efforts. It is that same added dimension you will receive by engaging, learning, and living, Getting Talent Back to Work. Over to you guys at CEO.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Hello, everyone. My name is Jenna, or Genevieve. Hearing you speak about it, Elizabeth, I was really humbled to think that I've been a part of such an important initiative. I remember about this time last year, I was sitting on the corner of my couch with my little puppy on my lap, and I started to write the scripts for the curriculum, the 10-hour training content that now lives on the SHRM website. So it's really important to me, both professionally and personally. Like I mentioned, my name is Jenna and I work for the Center for Employment Opportunities. We are a workforce development nonprofit agency that collaborated with SHRM, or that continues to collaborate with SHRM, to create this training and other tools that are located on the Getting Talent Back to Work website. At CEO, I wear a couple of different hats, but as it relates to this training, I have the opportunity to partner with businesses like yours and people like you to help us think differently about employment practices for people like me, someone with a criminal conviction and an employee. Employment is so important to my life. It not only has given me an opportunity to provide for my family, but it is also a part of my identity. I don't know if that's always a good or a bad thing, right? But employment is a part of who I am. So thank you for being here with us, and stay with us for the next 40 minutes or so. I hope you walk away with something new that you can apply to your workforce and make it a little bit more inclusive for people like me. So with that, SHRM envisions a world of work that works for all. The SHRM Foundation, as a result of its generous donors, is able to lead positive social change impacting work, workers, and the workplace. We are really happy that you are here with us today. The SHRM Foundation is thrilled to offer this important training opportunity to help open up workplace opportunities to talented people for for far too long have been excluded from the workforce, and that is people with criminal convictions. No matter the state of the economy, it is always challenging to find the best talent for our companies. And the SHRM Foundation believes that a commitment to hiring people with convictions is good for business and it is also good for the community. This training is based off of our third certificate program launched by the SHRM Foundation to highlight people who have experienced barriers to hiring. You can find more information about the other two, which is Veterans at Work and Employing Abilities at Work, linked on the SHRM Foundation website. Erin, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are?
Thank you, Jenna, for the warm handoff. And thank you, everybody, for allowing us this platform to speak about bringing people home with dignity and warmth. So as Jenna spoke about CEO, I myself, my name is Aaron Franklin. I'm the program manager at CEO Los Angeles. I myself is formerly incarcerated. I served 13 years in the California State Prison, and the skills that I have learned along my journey has helped me become a pillar of my community and an inspiration to our returning citizens. I oversee an office of about 26 staff members who are helping to heal our communities by serving those who are returning home from incarceration. CEO, or Center for Employment Opportunities, is a workforce development program working exclusively with people who have criminal convictions. The organization recruits, employs, trains, and provides wraparound vocational support for each individual in the program and have been doing so for over 30 years. CEO and SHRM consulted with a variety of subject matter experts to ensure that what we are bringing you today is best in class and informed by people that have deep expertise in subject areas. Jenna, take them away.
Thank you, Erin, so much. You know, Erin didn't mention this, but if you take the SHRM training curriculum, the 10-hour training certificate, you'll see him there. He is one of the people that are featured, and he shares his life story with us. So he's a bit of a movie star as it relates to the SHRM curriculum. So find him on there. You're able to learn a little bit more about him. So simply stated, our goal is that you will become a solution partner and will be inspired to create a values-driven workplace that empowers people with conviction histories to become a trusted member of your workforce. The SHRM Getting Talent Back to Work initiative would not have been possible if it was not for the gracious backing and the funding received from the Lumina Foundation. The Lumina Foundation has, for many years, been committed to helping all people find success in our economy. And I'm almost done with the introductions here, so stay with me for another minute. In addition to the funding that we received from the Lumina Foundation and the subject matter experts at the Center for Employment Opportunities, SHRM also partnered with businesses who have cracked the code on inclusive hiring. A couple of these to mention is Hot Chicken Takeover, which I'm going to share with you in a little bit, Vice Media, and Dave's Killer Bread. These companies have been leading the way on hiring people with convictions, which, like I mentioned, we'll discuss in just a little bit. Also, other people that we partner with in the community include experts from diversity, equity, and inclusion, employment law, and of course, people with lived experience. I just want to give a shout out here really quick before I even dive into the content. I want to mention and highlight that all of the work that all the training that you're receiving today and all of the resources that you have on the Getting Talent Back to Work website is grounded in the lived experience and the expertise of people that have experienced employment with criminal convictions. It was really critical to us to make sure that it was centered on their experiences and done so through the lens of someone that has experienced employment with a criminal conviction themselves. Let's go ahead and dive right on in. Erin, I'm passing it back to you.
Yes, awesome. So let's jump right into it. So briefly, I would like to set the stage on how we discuss this work. And I would like to talk about the importance of the work in itself. So we're going to speak about the importance of language, the importance of hiring people with convictions, and the positive impact that hiring people with convictions have on our community and businesses. So first, we're going to jump into language that matters, right? And this is so important to me, guys. So people, I would like to start off by saying this. People are not the sum of their worst choice or mistake. Brian Stevenson, a national leader in justice reform, says this best. He says, people are more than the worst thing that they have ever done. A simple thing for us all to remember, but it is incredibly powerful when we speak about working towards an inclusive workplace. I want everyone, just briefly, to take 10 seconds and think about the worst thing that you have ever done. Just take 10 seconds. The worst thing that you have ever done. Now, after that 10 seconds, I want you to ask yourself if you would like to be labeled by that mistake for the rest of your life. And when we think about this, everyone, I want us to think about the importance of the hope of an inclusive environment to where we are not calling someone an inmate or a felon or a sex offender, which is probably reflective on the worst choice that an individual will have ever done. Include, let's start to use words that are reflective of the person's humanity rather than boiling them down to the crime of conviction. For example, many people that have come in contact with the criminal system are legally innocent until proven guilty. They have not been convicted of a crime and soon may be found innocent. So to label them as a convict, that is not reflective of their true legal situation. And this adds an unshakable stigma when it comes to employment. For the remainder of this presentation, you will hear us use words such as people in prison instead of prisoner, or people on parole instead of parolee. This language describes the person first, and when appropriate, their involvement with the criminal legal system. I invite you all to use this language. As we shift our language, it is hoped that the treatment and understanding of people with convictions and their histories will change. So, why second chance employment? Over the past few minutes, you have heard me speak a lot about why the SHRM Foundation is dedicated to this work and the impact the SHRM Foundation hopes to have on the broader society. Second chance employment is a term that's commonly used to describe the practice of providing employment opportunities to the most qualified candidate, regardless of the person's criminal background. Oftentimes, people are weary to hire people with conviction histories because of the stigma that comes with that person that's hired. This is a hard situation to address. Over the course of the training, you'll learn that many employers that have widened their employment practices have experienced positive results. Each individual's success stories are unique, exciting, and has the potential to make a great larger impact in our community. I always say this to my staff. You give a job, you heal a family. Jenna, take us away.
Thank you so much, Erin. That was really powerful. I like what you said about give a job and heal a family. I mentioned before when I first started that the opportunity for employment has helped me provide for myself and my family. And it is also a part of my identity. I think it's these stories, right, that help shift the narrative when we talk about second chance employment. Over the next, now we have about 30 minutes or so, we are going to talk about the complexities of the criminal legal system, how to build buy-in and gain support from your company and from your peers. We're going to briefly touch on the talented life cycle, and we're going to talk about how you as an employer can be a catalyst for social change. So let's start talking about culture change and buy-in before we even get into the talent life cycle. So creating a culture shift within your organization often begins with building buy-in from peers and from management. Some of you may come from an employer that is really motivated and is excited to do this work, and others may be here today that are facing some resistance. So over the next few minutes, we're going to talk about some strategies to get your colleagues on board and then to have them see the value, the same value that you have in hiring people with convictions. First, it is always a good idea to identify who in your organization can be a champion for this work and also who may need some additional information to gain their buy-in. This will give you a goal, a clear, concise objective, and will help you build allies in the work to accomplish this task. After you've identified key stakeholders, think through and examine how there might be some barriers existing within your organization to get this initiative really underway. Do people believe things about second chance employment that are simply not true? For example, you may need to utilize facts to dispel myths. A common myth, if you will, is that people with convictions are unreliable or that they're going to have misconduct at work. This is false. Research shows that hiring people with criminal convictions actually leads to a higher retention rate, and people with convictions are no more likely to be fired for misconduct than others without a criminal record. Elizabeth mentioned previously that there's a new research that's being released, so be on the lookout for that soon. That can also help you build buy-in and use facts to dispel myths. And lastly, really consider your organizational values. What does your value statement say, and are you living that message? Words like community-driven or family-focused are often used to describe an organization's culture. But how often does that community also include people with criminal convictions that are in need of employment? So we've talked about buy-in. And talked about kind of using facts to dispel myths. Let's move forward to talk about the talent lifecycle. I also wanted to mention that this is only a 40-minute training, and we can spend hours and hours and hours unpacking all of these components, if you will, within this training. So we're just giving you kind of a taste test of what you can find inside of the certificate program. So once we've assessed how our values align with employment opportunities, we can then begin to focus on the candidate. There are millions of talented people with conviction histories that just because of their records have not been offered employment. People want an opportunity to prove themselves as valuable employees. It is important to note that hiring people with convictions should not be considered charity work, but rather the right thing to do because they're talented candidates and they have skills that can be a value add to your company. In this section, I'm going to provide some tips on how to acquire talent for your business. In addition to typical talent pipelines that I'm sure you're all familiar with, I wanted to provide a brief preview about some non-traditional ways that you can go about accessing talent. Community colleges, for example, is a really good opportunity or a good agency to network with. Many local colleges have vocational training programs that are tailored to serve people returning back to the community from incarceration, or may even run programs inside of jails and prisons. I suggest reaching out to local vocational training programs to explore how their training can meet your employment needs. One thing is for certain, that people are in school are usually really motivated to find work and to be able to showcase their newly acquired skills. Probation and parole is another non-traditional talent pipeline. I know it sounds kind of contrary to popular belief, but employment is usually a condition of someone's probation and parole requirements, and probation and parole officers usually spend a lot of time with the people that are on caseload. Thus, they have a good idea of the skills that people have and how these individuals can meet your hiring needs. Probation and parole departments also sometimes have the ability to offset training and tool costs and could provide approval to travel outside of someone's restrictions, like mileage restrictions or boundaries, if you will, and can change curfew requirements. And lastly, reentry programs like CEO. Chances are there are some reentry programs in your community. Reentry programs exist to help people with convictions or returning home from incarceration, and they do so by providing employment training, education, housing, substance use, a plethora of different supportive services to help people on their transition. Also, most reentry programs usually have staff that are working closely with people. If you reach out to these staff members with your specific employment needs, I bet that they would be able to refer someone that closely aligns with your talent goals. So now we've talked about kind of building buy-in, and we've talked about non-traditional talent pipelines. Let's talk about how you as an employer can signal that you are a second chance employer. Believe me when I say that people with convictions, we have a keen eye in evaluating whether an employer may be welcoming of us. Job seekers pay close attention to signals that you may not even be aware that you're making. So in order to signal your inclusion practices, pay close attention to your recruitment material. Is there anything on your job description that talks about a background check? I know personally, when I see a background check, I'm like, woo, my sirens go off. And I came home from incarceration in 2006 and have done significant work on myself. However, just that phrase kind of sends me into a place of anxiety and uncomfort. Also, will a background check be conducted? And is this just something that's added on your recruitment material and it may not even be needed? Is it necessary? If a background check is required, does a description of the background check adequately, describe what is being looked for? You can always say something like, due to the nature of this job, anyone with a conviction and anyone with a violent conviction will not be considered. However, all other convictions have no bearing on the job opportunity. You can also signal that you are a second chance employer by including or mentioning people with convictions in your DE&I statement. Oftentimes, this is a population that is left out. It may be just an easy fix by adding a couple of words, but can have a huge impact on your employment hiring practices. And lastly, word of mouth is critical. Like I mentioned, there are millions of people in the community that are currently either incarcerated or have a criminal conviction and are going to eventually need jobs. This means that you or many people that are a part of your peers or part of your workforce know someone with a criminal record. People also with criminal records are really familiar with companies that are hiring and that they're welcome at, and they love spreading the word themselves. Erin, talk to us a little bit about interviewing.
Great information, Jenna. Thank you. Yes, definitely. So we're going to transition with all that information over to interviewing. So let's take a few seconds to think about the various interviews that we've all been on throughout our professional careers. Think about the interviews that you facilitated. What do you, as a job seeker, and the people that you have interviewed have in common? Let's drop a few links in the chat so we can open it up to understand what we have in common as the people who are interviewing and the interviewee.
I think what we're looking for is a word or two about how you felt when you're going on an interview and how the people that you are interviewing also feel. What do you have in common? Maybe you can add a word or two into the chat.
Jenny, you might monitor the chat for me?
I got it.
Nervous, judged. Great. So somebody said nervous. One of the things that we all have in common, right, going into an interview is nerves. Everyone gets a bit nervous going into an interview. Potentially, our livelihood is on the line, and you're stepping into a space of the unknown. This is no different for people with convictions. And the anxiety of a person who have a criminal conviction is heightened by fear of saying the wrong thing or not saying enough, then being accused of being deceitful by not disclosing their conviction or being denied immediately for disclosing too much. So one of the greatest source of stress for job seekers with conviction is the conviction question, right? One person who we worked closely with said it best. He said, imagine being asked about your worst choice or mistake by a complete stranger, and then add the fact, depending upon your response, your future is on the line. Given this, it is incredibly important to consider the structure of our interview and the questions that are being asked and the implications behind them. For example, the question, tell me about yourself. This can seem open to us, right? But this can mean something completely different to someone with a conviction history. When this question is asked, it brings up insecurities of their past mistakes. This makes it feel as if their identity will always be wrapped up in their past conviction rather than be viewed for their abilities. When you ask this question, some may be wondering if you are actually asking about their conviction, or wondering if this is the best time to disclose it. Hiring managers know that disclosing a criminal conviction during the first few minutes of an interview is not the ideal time. However, people with convictions may think that this is appropriate to share because of the fear that they are feeling of being dishonest. They just want a equal chance at an interview. There are 4 best practices that I want to highlight today. Although we are talking about people with conviction histories, this applies to any interview. So number 1, be purposeful. Be purposeful in the interview questions. Ask questions that explore a person's skill set and learn as much as you can about the applicant to evaluate if the interviewee is a good match for your company. Instead of asking a question like, tell me about your previous place of employment, you can ask a question like, tell me about the skills you believe you have that matches the job description. Number 2, be open. Some job seekers may not have recent job experience, but may have acquired transferable skills while incarcerated. This is one of the best tools that school cannot teach: transferable skills. A creative way to learn about transferable skills is to ask a question like, what type of skills have you developed outside of employment that you feel that will be an asset to our company? Asking an open question like this allows a person to think deeper outside of their criminal conviction and share with you the areas of expertise that they may have gained throughout their incarceration. Think about yourself. I will bet that as a professional, you've had opportunities outside of employment that has gained you your professional development, such as social activities, sports, hobbies, that has all developed you into the person that you are today. There's no difference from the inside. People have done great things on the inside. Just personally, I know people that have studied from front to back, that has learned so many great skills, that has worked on themselves throughout that time. Let's not overlook that. Number 3, practice. Practice will help you react when someone discloses a criminal conviction. Naturally, our inclination is to be interested and to ask a follow-up question. I know I would. However, this may not be the time. The purpose of an interview is to learn about a person's skill set. A good response would be, right now, I really want to learn about the skills that you have to offer. I appreciate you disclosing your criminal conviction. If that time ever comes up and is necessary, we can talk about it later on in the application process. But right now, I want to know about you and your skill sets. And lastly, be aware. We all have our own biases, right? Be careful that we do not bring that into the workplace and into the interview. Our job is to find the most qualified candidate for the position, the role, and our organization. We're looking for a culture shift, not a conviction. Jenna, take them away.
Thanks so much, Erin. I just wanted to talk about a case study briefly and give you an example about how some other employers in the community are doing this well. So in 2017, Vice Media covered President Barack Obama's visit to a federal prison, and this is the first time a sitting president has visited that particular correctional institution. This event inspired people across Vice Media to consider what they, as a company, could do differently to disrupt incarceration. In response, Vice Media leadership identified a number of ways that they could, as a company, adjust their work practices. One clear way was opening up their hiring practice so people with convictions weren't locked out of this workplace that they believed was excellent and that they wanted people to experience. Vice identified a local partner in the community, in New York City actually, that worked closely with people returning to the community from incarceration. In partnership with this agency, the reentry program that we talked about a few minutes ago, they established an apprenticeship program for young people with convictions. And many of these apprenticeships have led to full-time employment in different areas across the organization, such as finance, such as human resources. There has been a plethora of different job opportunities that have resulted because of the apprenticeship opportunity. I talked a little bit about hiring and onboarding with the case study from Vice Media. Let's talk about it just a little bit more. So after the interview and finding the perfect candidate for the job, you now move on to the hiring and onboarding process. We're kind of diving more into the talent life cycle. We are going to spend some time thinking about hiring considerations as it relates to someone with a conviction, and then we're going to spend a few minutes talking about onboarding. It is imperative that you are familiar with hiring laws in your local jurisdiction. You want to make sure that as an employer, you are following all employment laws. I would imagine that there's some form of ban the box that applies to your community. Let's talk about it just a little bit more in detail. So ban the box refers to a whole set of laws across the country now that really govern how employers can ask about a person's criminal conviction. Ban the Box started with an advocacy group in California called All of Us or None. And as a result of their efforts, they have helped lead this push nationally. Ban the Box laws either completely remove the conviction question from the application or require that an employer not ask about a conviction until further on in the hiring process. If your company has decided in conjunction with the Ban the Box laws that they still want to evaluate someone's criminal past, then a background check is usually the best way to go about it. A background check is a detailed report of someone's involvement with the criminal legal system. I find it is absolutely critical to mention, for me at least, to say that a background check is not a complete representation of your candidate, but only a summary of their poor choices and mistakes that a person has made that has resulted in criminal legal involvement. Aaron mentioned earlier, I thought he was bringing in the sunshine within the first 5 minutes when he asked us all to think about our worst choice or poorest mistake. Right? And I thought for a second, I'm like, wow, what a way to start. But I loved it because it got me to think, and then I want to pull us back into that moment. Think about your worst choice, right? Or your poorest mistake. Would you want to present that before an employer and then be judged off of it? That is basically what a background check is. It does not also account for anything that led up to that poor choice or worst mistake. And it also doesn't account for anything that's happened after that for a person to rehabilitate themselves. Also, errors are common in background checks. If you're wondering, how do all of these mistakes end up here? It is because there are a lot of different agencies whose data goes into the background checks. Everyone from police to courts to jails to prisons. And there are many opportunities along the way for human error as they are doing all of this data entry. In general, we recommend that you only request background checks that include convictions, not arrests, because that person is considered innocent. And we also recommend that you limit how far back you look in the background check. After a background check comes back, it is now time to decide whether or not you want to move forward with a candidate, given what you find on their background check report. We recommend that you use an individualized assessment, and one example is called the Nature Time Nature test. So the Nature Time Nature test evaluates the nature of the conviction, the time that has passed since the conviction, and the nature of the job duties. If someone is disqualified from a job opportunity, it should be because the nature of the conviction has a direct and adverse relationship on the nature of the job duties. 2 key laws to review as you consider your company's background check processes are the Fair Credit Reporting Act and EEO guidance. Both of these resources can be found on the SHRM website. And also make sure that you're in compliance with local and federal laws. I wanted us all to think for 1 second about what it is like on your first week of work. If you wouldn't mind, add a word or two about what it feels like to start your first day on the job or your first week of work. Overwhelming. I'm not sure if that was exciting, confusing, unclear, exciting, and overwhelming. Absolutely. Information overload. I often say it feels like you're drinking from a fire hydrant, right? Like all of this information is coming at you and you feel like you need a glossary of all of these new terms that you're learning, and you're writing things down, and you don't know who to ask. You don't know if you're asking too much. You want to know, you want to act like you know, but you don't know. All of these weird emotions that happen when you're starting at a new job. And then I want you to think about an employer that has made you feel comfortable. What have they done? What has an employer done to make you feel comfortable on your first day of work? Add it in the chat box. Introduced you to a coworker, taking you out to lunch. Yes. Greeted you as a person. That's right. Wanted to know about you. Welcome kits and meet and greets. That's right. Reassurance. That's so true, right? I remember on the first day of my work at my old job, my boss met me in the foyer. She waited for me to walk in, and then she met me and she walked me through, and she showed me where the restroom was, and she showed me where I could put my belongings, and she showed me where I was going to sit. I became more familiar with my surroundings. So in general, we recommend that you treat all employees the same way. And I'm going to highlight for the next few minutes ways that you can adjust your practice for any new employee in your workforce. So for people coming home from incarceration, many welcome a routine and are uncomfortable with the unknowns just like you. Prison or incarceration is a place of routine. You wake up at the same time, you eat the same food, you do the same thing every single day. So you get used to this sense of routine. New employment can mean that you're completely out of your comfort zone, right? So I would suggest you let all employees know what they can expect during their first week of work. Also, think about your financial practices. Some people, all employees, specifically, and including people returning to the community from incarceration, may have never had a bank account, or if they had a bank account, may have exhausted all of their funds during their time while they were incarcerated. Do you require that all employees have direct deposits? Is that how they get paid? What if someone can't have a bank account? Do you require that all employees pay for their uniforms or specific tools up front, and then you reimburse them at a later time? Are they required to pay for training? Do they need a credit card for a hotel? All new employees may be nervous to tell you about their current financial situation. So pay close attention to your current financial practices, especially for new employees. And just as you would for all employees, I would suggest to offer to make reasonable accommodations to help with their new transition. It is important to mention that people should not be given special treatment because of their legal situation, but should be given equal consideration. An employee may need to come in a few minutes early because they have a mandatory meeting with a probation or parole officer, something that they have no control over. And in fact, if they miss, it can jeopardize their freedom. And lastly, don't forget to stay connected with your new employee. You may have been the first familiar face, and so check in with them. They'd appreciate it. And I'm going to mention one more thing that's really important to me, and it's a result of something that I've experienced. During your onboarding process, tell your new employee, all employees, when the background check is over. Oftentimes, people with convictions remain uncertain if their background check is randomly going to pop up, and they're going to be embarrassed and walked off the job site. It really helps us feel comfortable at a new place of employment when we know that whole process is done. It also increases trust and transparency. Let's talk about talent development a little bit. So moving right along the talent life cycle, we've talked about recruiting skilled staff and interviewing and hiring and onboarding. And now we're at our end with talent development. People with conviction histories are often hired to get hungry and eager to advance within your company. Investing in them is good for you, and it's good for your business. There are 4 action steps that you can take in order to develop talent within your employees. First, cultivate a sense of belonging, opportunity, and inspire ambition within them. If they've started at an entry level, help them understand where growth is possible. Recognize the strengths that they bring to your business. Provide feedback to your employees. Let them know what they're doing well and also where they can improve. Provide job shadowing opportunities to them and allow them access to an expanded network. Envisioning people with growth can allow them to picture themselves in roles that they would have never even imagined before. Bring them to a meeting, introduce them to new people, and teach them how to use LinkedIn. Little story that I'll share with you. I lead our engagement efforts, part of our engagement efforts at CEO with the people that we serve. And I do like this cohort type of model with people over the course of 6-week cohorts with professional development. One of the individuals is going to job shadow me on Thursday. And because I do all of my meetings virtually, he's actually located across the state from me, but I sent him invites to all of my invitations, or to all of my meetings, excuse me. So he is going to jump online with me and just job shadow me for the day, and have opportunity to be part of conversations that he may have not had the opportunity to before. And lastly, invest in continued training and education for them. There are a lot of non-traditional benefits that can help support us. A few ideas are paid time off to attend an advocacy event, stipends for college books, and even tuition for college. These small investments can have a huge payback for your company. I wanted to talk really quickly about Hot Chicken Takeover. They are a fast food chicken restaurant in the Midwest, and they opened their doors in 2015. They launched with the idea of providing fair employment opportunities to people in their community, specifically people that were experiencing homelessness and also people with convictions. What they realized is a lot of their employees did not have access to reliable transportation, and other personal stressors are really affecting their workforce performance. So what they did is, instead of punishing what they seemed to be unreliable employees, they chose to update their benefits package. They reviewed their current employment benefit offerings, and then they did a survey to explore if these benefits were meeting their employees' needs. What they learned is there was non-traditional benefits that could help stabilize their employees' experience outside of the workforce, and thus their experience outside of the workforce would allow them to perform at a better rate. So what they did, for one example, is they offered 0% interest loans to employees with a plan to invest in life stabilizing expenses such as a car or a security deposit for an apartment. This specific benefit depended on positive performance reviews, and there was incentivized ways that they could pay back this loan. They realized that with the implementation of this new benefit package, that they experienced reliability and consistent staffing and a decrease in turnover. They are leaders in this field, and they are actually now teaching other employers how to do this work. We are going to end here, and we're going to talk about how turnover is really costly, and I'm going to provide a few strategies for you to consider on how to improve your talent mobility and retention strategies. Thinking about talent mobility and making strategic investments in your employees is not only good for you, but it's also good for them. While your employee is working with you, here are a few strategies that you can consider. So first, internally, take a look at your career pathways. Are there certain requirements that are listed for career mobility within your organization that are not necessary? So an example of this could be education requirements, and we see this frequently. A position may require a master's degree, but really what you're looking for is someone that knows how to speak publicly and how to write reports. By spending time auditing your career pathways, you can create more opportunities for internal promotions. A simple way to gauge your employees' satisfaction is to talk to them. How often do employees meet with their direct supervisors? How does your employer gauge employee satisfaction? How often do you solicit feedback? And how often do you close the feedback loop? And building professional networks, I can't talk about this enough, really helps people grow professionally and personally, and even helps them when it's time for them to move on. The reality is that most of your employees are not going to stay with you forever. Think about the skills that you've learned at previous places of employment and how it's helped you develop professionally. How have these lessons been critical for your growth? And let's give the same consideration for others. And I'm ending here, just a few more minutes, and I just wanted to talk about retention practices. People's convictions can significantly impact their well-being. There's these things called collateral consequences, and people returning home to the community face 44,000 of them, one of which being occupational licensing, another professional credential that can be disrupted because of someone's background. But you as an employer have a lot of power in advocating at a licensing board. You can write letters of support, you can talk directly to the licensing board, and you can even hire an attorney to help a person process the paperwork. And lastly, create a sense of connectivity to your company and a sense of belonging. One way to do this, like I mentioned before, is engaging them with their feedback. Asking for their feedback signals that their opinion matters and that they are valued. We have covered a lot today, and I'm so happy to report that I am ending on time. I love it when that happens. So we'll have a few minutes for questions and answers after that, after this. And I just wanted to talk about the SHRM initiative and some resources that you have access to. You can visit the SHRM website for the Getting Talent Back to Work resources. SHRM offers a 10-hour certificate program to ensure that you are up to date with second chance hiring practices. There is a workbook, it's pretty amazing, that accompanies the learning activities, and you could walk away with a detailed guide on how to implement these changes in your workforce. On the SHRM website, you will also have access to a personalized assessment tool. All you have to do is answer a couple of questions, and you are going to get an individualized report that talks about how that's going to guide you on these inclusive hiring practices. And also by visiting the SHRM website, you can access stories from employees and employers. You can sign the pledge to signal to others that you are a second chance employer, and you could browse through tons of resources on the digital toolkit. I am done, except I have one more thing to say is we love community engagement. On the screen, you find 4 different areas where you can continue to be involved. Each of these sections have really cool stories that you can use. And we'd love to hear from you. We are always interested in partnering with employers like you. If you'd like to connect with us to do an individualized presentation for your company, we would love it. We can present this material, we can present this material more condensed. Please feel free to look me up on LinkedIn. It's Genevieve Rimer or Jenna Rimer. Same goes for Erin. And I'll also add my email to the chat box, and you could reach out to me directly as well. Thanks so much for spending some time with me this morning, and we'll open it up for questions and answers. I'm not sure if people can take themselves off of mute, or if it'd be preferable that they enter their questions in the chat box.
Actually, people can take themselves off of mute. It's no problem. They have the ability to do that. So if anyone has a question, don't be shy. Hang on here for a second. Great. I see you just put your email in the chat box for people as well, in case they have questions after the program. Okay, so I don't see any questions right now. Does anyone have, okay, oh, great, Rose.
I have one quick question. My name's Rose. I'm with a nonprofit called Ayuda, and some of our funders are starting to push to have background checks. We haven't traditionally done background checks on people coming into employment. So we're trying to have a really thoughtful approach to, like, you guys talked a little bit about this, to like how we roll out as we start needing to have background checks in more areas for our funders. And our funders actually don't give us a lot of guidance in how they want those background checks interpreted. So I was actually just wondering if you had any resources that I could take a look at as I'm trying to build like an inclusive and friendly practice into our employment, where we think we will start having to include background checks, but obviously we only want the right people to, like, only want the people to see them who need to, and only want like relevant aspects of them to impact the job decision. And as I'm trying to kind of build that process and policy, I was just hoping you knew of a good resource or samples or anything to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Rose, for asking that question. This is something I've also thought a lot about. And the other day I was working with someone and I started to think about a way to have a tangible like guide for a background check process. And what I suggested the employer do is map out like the exact job duties, and then in relation to the job duties, disqualifying things, right? So oftentimes people naturally, because of biases, want to do a blanket ban on all people, or certain convictions, right? But these convictions may not have that direct and adverse relationship to the job duties. And then I would always ask myself, why? Why are we excluding this, and how does it relate to the job duties? I have a couple of resources. If you wouldn't mind putting your email in the chat, I can send them to you if you'd like.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks so much.
And I love the name Ayuda. So it means help in Spanish for those that don't know.
Rose, this is Elizabeth Combe. I will say, and I don't know any of the nature of your funders, but in a previous role that I was in, we actually had some success in going back and speaking to them about our concerns about it was around a different issue of bias. And we were able to find a balance with them, and it actually helped the fund grantee relationship. So I just wanted to also mention that, not knowing anything, because we did it with, we were a little nervous about doing it, and it worked out really well for us.
Thanks.
Hi, Jenna and Aaron. I wanted to just say, my name is Tiffany Spence-Blocker. I'm an HR director with Sodexo. And what a great program and presentation. Just interestingly enough, we just had a HR community call where Sodexo has started a frontline hiring strategy. And I am going to forward your information to the person that is leading that effort, because hopefully there'll be, some connection there and some synergies, because I think this would be a great addition to their strategy.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Are there any additional questions from the group? Okay, well, you have their emails are in the chat. So if you think of something after the program, feel free to email or send them to me at DC SHRM, and I'd be happy to forward them along. So I just want to take a couple minutes to close this out. I really want to thank Jenna and Aaron for this great presentation today. And I also want to thank Elizabeth Combe and the SHRM Foundation for your support. And then I would like to just highlight a couple of upcoming events that we have. So we have several things occurring in May, continuing this month. So on May 12th, we have a Young Professionals event featuring a panel on modern networking. On the 19th, we have a virtual roundtable on coping with compassion fatigue. That should be an interesting program. On May 21st, we're participating with other HR-related organizations in a virtual mega mixer networking event, and that's being hosted by the International Coaching Federation. And then, of course, be sure to register for our employment law update to be held on May 25th and 26th. This event is actually features 2 half-day sessions covering local and national HR topics, and it's approved by SHRM and HRCI for 6 business credits. So be sure to register for that. And then, as we discussed earlier, just one more reminder about the June 10th Career Connection event that we are having with CSOSA. So if you are recruiting for any open positions in your company, please go ahead and register for that event. They're all available at our website at dcshrm.org. And then watch in your email box for the certificate and the link to this recording. I did drop the evaluation survey link in the chat box, but I'll also include it on the follow-up emails. So, thanks again for joining us today from everyone at DC SHRM. We hope you stay well, and we look forward to seeing you at a future event. Great. Thanks so much, everyone. Take care.